It started as a simple idea. A man trying to solve a mystery inside his own home. Every night, he woke up to strange noises. Footsteps when no one was there, whispers that seemed to come from the walls, and objects that moved on their own. At first, he thought it was all in his head. Maybe he was just exhausted, maybe it was stress. But deep down, something told him he had to know the truth. So, he set up cameras all around his room, one by the bed, one near the door, and another pointed right at the closet. That night, everything changed. When he watched the footage the next morning, what he saw didn't just scare him. It broke him. Because what was caught on camera defied logic, time, and everything he thought he knew about reality. This is the story of that footage and the terrifying truth it revealed. Chapter 1: The Nightly Disturbances. It began quietly, too quietly to make sense. A faint sound in the dark, like soft footsteps brushing against the wooden floor. Then, silence. He'd sit up in bed, heart pounding, staring into the shadows, waiting for something, anything, to move. But nothing ever did. First, he laughed it off. Maybe it was the wind, or the pipe settling, or the old house just doing what old houses do, whispering at night. But deep down, something didn't feel right. These sounds weren't random. They had rhythm, intent. Every night around the same time, 3 a.m., he'd hear it. A slow creak near the closet door, followed by the faintest tap, tap, tap like fingernails against wood. Once he swore he heard breathing, soft, close, right beside his bed. He told himself he was imagining things, maybe stress from work, maybe insomnia. But as the nights passed, the noises grew bolder. His phone charger was unplugged one morning. Picture frame fell without reason. And his cat, usually calm, refused to enter the room. That's when the fear started to sink in. What if something was really there? Something that didn't want to be seen, but wanted him to know it was watching. Chapter 2: Doubt and Denial. The next morning, he laughed at himself. "Get a grip," he muttered, forcing a smile in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles hung under his eyes. Proof of another sleepless night spent chasing noises that didn't exist. At least, that's what he told himself. He started looking for logic. Maybe it was the house settling, or the cat knocking things over. He even checked online forums, weird noises at night, signs of a mouse infestation, sleep paralysis. Every answer made sense. Every explanation helped him feel a little saner. But the relief never lasted long, because the sounds kept happening. Every night, the same hour, the same pattern. And every time he tried to record them with his phone, the audio glitched, distorted static like something interfered with it. Friends told him to get some rest, or stop watching horror movies. He laughed along, pretending it didn't bother him. But the truth? He was scared to sleep. The silence before the sounds felt heavier now, almost charged, like the air was waiting for something. He tried moving to the couch. The noises followed. That's when the doubt started to crumble. Because sometimes, denial is easier than facing the truth. And the truth was beginning to whisper through the walls. Chapter 3: The Decision to Record. By the fourth night, sleep was impossible. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, clutching his blanket like armor. Every creak, every faint rustle sent adrenaline through his veins. Enough was enough. If no one believed him, he'd get proof. That morning, he ordered 3 motion-activated cameras, the kind meant for home security. Nothing fancy, just something to catch whatever was disturbing his nights. When the box arrived 2 days later, he hesitated. The rational part of his mind whispered, "What if you find nothing?" But another voice, colder and more curious, asked, "What if you do?" He unboxed the cameras, setting them up one by one. One faced his bed, another the doorway, and the last pointed directly at the closet, the place he hated looking at the most. That night, he sat on the edge of his bed, watching the tiny red lights blink. He almost felt safer, knowing the cameras were watching for him. Almost. But as the lights dimmed and the house fell quiet, a strange thought crossed his mind. What if the act of watching invites it closer? He brushed it off, turned out the lamp, and forced his eyes shut. Somewhere in the dark, The faint sound of movement answered. The cameras were rolling. Chapter 4: Setting the cameras. The setup took longer than expected, not because it was complicated, but because every shadow felt alive. Every dark corner seemed to be watching him back. He adjusted the first camera, checking the angle through his phone. The feed flickered, then stabilized, the foot of his bed in clear view. The second one faced the doorway, capturing the hallway beyond. That one mattered too. The noises often came from there. Then came the closet. He hated that part the most. The door always creaked open slightly on its own, even after he'd shut it tight. He positioned the third camera, hesitated for a moment, then taped the closet door shut, just in case. The cameras blinked to life. A faint hum filled the room, the kind of sound you don't notice until the silence around it becomes unbearable. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring into the small lenses. "Let's see what's so funny," he muttered under his breath, trying to sound brave. But deep down, he felt like he'd just crossed an invisible line, a point of no return. When he finally turned off the lights, his room looked different. The red LED dots glowed in the dark, like tiny eyes, unblinking, waiting. For the first time, he wasn't the only one watching. Chapter 5: The First Playback. The morning after the first night of recording, he woke up with that heavy feeling, the kind that sits in your stomach before you even know why. He didn't remember hearing much. No bangs, no whispers, just restless dreams and the uneasy sense that someone had been standing nearby while he slept. He brewed a cup of coffee, opened his laptop, and began reviewing the footage. The first few hours were uneventful, just him tossing and turning, the usual creaks of the old house. He almost felt embarrassed for believing any of it. Then, around 3:12 a.m., something shifted. The closet camera flickered, just for a second. The image distorted, then froze, as if the feed had been interrupted. When it resumed, the closet door, which he'd taped shut, appeared slightly open. His heart pounded. He scrubbed back through the timeline, watching frame by frame. Nothing. No movement. No visible tampering. The tape just wasn't there anymore. And yet, at one point, the blanket on his bed seemed to pull slightly. Not much, just an inch, but enough to make him stop breathing. He replayed it again and again, hoping it was a glitch, but glitches don't breathe. And right before the clip ended, a shadow, faint, human-shaped, moved behind the bed. Chapter 6: Movement in the Shadows. He replayed that few seconds a dozen times, each time hoping his mind had imagined it, that his eyes were just tired, that the lighting had played a trick. But the more he looked, the harder it was to deny. There was movement, a shape that wasn't supposed to be there. He zoomed in. The image pixelated, but the outline remained, tall, thin, slightly hunched. It appeared just beside the bed, motionless for several frames, before vanishing as the camera glitched again. A chill ran down his spine. There was no one else in the house that night. Every door had been locked, every window sealed, and yet, there it was, something standing in his room while he slept. The next evening, he tried to convince himself it was a reflection, maybe a trick of light. He even checked the room for anything shiny, mirrors, metallic objects, anything that could explain it. Nothing matched. That night, he slept with the lights on. But fear doesn't care about light. Around 3:15, his cat, the one that avoided the room, began hissing at the empty corner near the closet. The air turned cold. He stared into the darkness, whispering, "Who's there?" No answer, only silence. But when he checked the camera the next morning, the shadow had moved closer. Chapter 7: The Closet Incident. That night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting. The air in the room felt heavier, almost pressing against his skin. Every sound, every small creak, made him jump. Still, he forced himself to keep the cameras running. He had to know. Around 3 a.m., it began again. A faint scratching sound, slow, deliberate, coming from the closet. His pulse quickened. He turned toward it, whispering into the dark, "Stop it!" But the noise grew louder. The tape he'd used to seal the door had peeled off. He could see the strip hanging loose, swaying gently. Then, without warning, the closet door creaked open on its own. He froze. The door opened only a few inches, but enough for him to see movement. Not a full figure, not a hand, but something shifting, like fabric sliding across the floor. He wanted to run, but his body refused to move. The air felt thick, electric. Then, from inside the closet, something breathed. A long, slow exhale that didn't belong to him. He grabbed his phone with trembling hands and turned on the flashlight. The closet was empty. But when he checked the footage the next morning, a hand, pale, skeletal, was visible for just one frame, curling back into the darkness. Chapter 8, Sleepless Vigil. After that night, he couldn't sleep at all. Not even for an hour. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind replayed that one frame, the hand. It didn't look human. The fingers were too long. The skin too pale, like something that hadn't seen light in years. He left the lights on, cameras rolling, and sat awake through the night. A silent witness in his own room. The clock's ticking became unbearable. 2 Uhr nachts. 2:30. 2:58. Each minute stretching longer than the last. At 3:10, a faint static noise filled the air. Not from the TV, but from nowhere. Then the temperature dropped. He could see his own breath. The camera light blinked twice, like it was struggling to stay on. He focused on the closet, half expecting it to open again. But this time it wasn't the closet that moved. Something shifted in the reflection of the mirror across the room. A dark outline standing right behind him. He turned instantly, nothing there. But when he looked back at the mirror, the shape lingered for half a second before fading. He sat frozen till sunrise, the camera still rolling, his heart thundering in his chest. When morning came, the mirror had fogged up completely. And written in the condensation were 3 words. Don't watch me. Chapter 9, the second night. The next evening, he told himself he wouldn't look at the mirror again. He even draped a bedsheet over it, hoping to erase whatever he saw the night before. But you can't hide from something that knows where you sleep. At 3 a.m., the air shifted once more. That same cold, unnatural stillness that made his skin crawl. The cameras clicked softly as they began recording. He tried to stay calm, pretending to scroll through his phone, pretending everything was normal. Then a faint knock. 3 times. Not from the door, from under the bed. His breath caught. The knocks came again, louder, faster. He jumped off the mattress, heart racing, and pointed his flashlight underneath. Nothing. Just the faint sound of static echoing through the room. The next morning, he reviewed the footage again and froze. At 3:02, the camera facing his bed captured something impossible. The blanket lifting slightly, as if someone crawled beneath it. No one entered. No one left. Yet the sheet rose and fell, like something breathing underneath. Frame by frame, he watched it move toward the foot of the bed. Then stop. Just before the clip ended, the camera caught his phone screen lighting up on its own. A notification that read, I see you. Chapter 10, the figure by the bed. He didn't remember falling asleep that night. Only the dream, a heavy weight pressing down on his chest, freezing him in place. He could see the room around him, but he couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air felt thick, humming with a low, static growl. And then, a figure appeared at the edge of the bed. First, it was just a shadow. But the longer he stared, the clearer it became. A tall silhouette, head tilted, as if studying him. Its shape was wrong. Limbs too long, neck bent at an unnatural angle. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. When his eyes finally snapped open, the room was empty. But the cameras weren't lying. The next morning, his heart nearly stopped as he reviewed the footage. At 3:14 a.m., the figure was there, standing at the exact spot where he'd seen it in his dream. No face, no features, just darkness shaped like a person. It stood there for 12 full seconds, watching him sleep. Then, slowly, it leaned forward, inches from his face, before disappearing in a burst of static. He paused the video, his reflection trembling in the laptop screen. Whatever it wasn't just in his head anymore. It was in the room with him. Chapter 11, Panic and Paranoia. By now, fear had settled into every corner of his life. He couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. Every sudden sound made him flinch. The creak of a chair, a car door slamming outside. Even the hum of his refrigerator felt sinister. He tried leaving the house, hoping distance might calm his nerves. But the fear followed him. The recordings looped in his mind, that shadow replaying over and over. How could something be so visible and yet so completely unexplainable? Friends noticed the change. "You look pale, man. Are you sick?" one asked. He smiled weakly, lied about insomnia. But behind that smile was a deep dread, a feeling that something had attached itself to him. At night, the fear became unbearable. He unplugged the cameras, certain that if he didn't see it, it couldn't hurt him. But the noises didn't stop. If anything, they grew bolder. Taps on the window, footsteps circling his bed. Once, he woke up with scratches on his arm. He tried calling a priest, then a local paranormal investigator, but stopped mid-dial each time. What would he even say? "Something's watching me in my own house?" Sleep-deprived and shaking, he looked into the dark corner where the shadow always stood, and whispered, "What do you want from me?" Chapter 12, Seeking Help. He finally broke. After weeks of sleepless nights and distorted whispers, he needed someone, anyone, to believe him. He reached out to an old friend named Mark, someone he trusted completely. Mark had always been the rational one, calm, skeptical, the kind of guy who needed proof before believing anything. Perfect. When Mark arrived that evening, the house already felt different. "You look like hell," he said half-jokingly, setting down his bag. The man forced a laugh, then opened his laptop. "You'll see why." They watched the clips together. At first, Mark looked unimpressed. But when the figure appeared, that dark shape by the bed, his face drained of color. "That's not possible," he whispered, leaning closer. "Is this edited?" "No," he said, trembling. "I swear, I didn't touch a thing." They watched the hand from the closet, the breathing, the static. By the end, Mark refused to look at the screen. "Man, this isn't something normal," Mark finally said, voice low. "You need to leave this house." But he couldn't. Every time he tried to pack a bag, something stopped him. That heavy, invisible weight pressing against his chest, like the house itself didn't want him to go. He wasn't just haunted anymore. He was trapped. Chapter 13, The Expert's Analysis. After that night with Mark, things escalated fast. Mark, now pale and shaken, contacted a local paranormal investigator, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Ross. She wasn't the stereotypical ghost hunter with gadgets and theatrics. She was calm, grounded, with years of research in unexplained phenomena. The kind of person who didn't jump to conclusions. When she arrived, she walked through the house slowly, pausing in each room, eyes half closed like she was listening to something the others couldn't hear. "It's heavy here," she murmured, "especially in the bedroom." They showed her the recordings, the shadow, the closet door, the figure by the bed. She said nothing at first, just leaned closer to the screen, her hand tightening around her necklace. When the footage ended, she exhaled sharply. "That's not residual energy," she said. "This reacts. It's aware of you." Mark frowned. "You're saying it's intelligent?" Dr. Ross nodded. "It knows it's being watched, and it doesn't like it." She suggested performing a spatial energy test, basically monitoring electromagnetic and temperature shifts in the room. Simple, non-invasive. But before she even unpacked her equipment, every light in the house flickered at once. Then the cameras, all three, turned off simultaneously. Dr. Ross looked up, her expression cold and certain. "It's not just haunting the space," she said quietly. "It's attached to him." Chapter 14, Historical Clues. Dr. Ross didn't waste time. The moment she left that night, she started digging into the property's history, land records, previous tenants, old news archives. She called him 2 days later, her voice uneasy. "You might want to sit down," she said. The house had been built in the 1940s, nothing unusual there. But what she found buried in local records was disturbing. Multiple police reports tied to the same address. Strange disappearances, noise complaints, and one chilling entry from 1978. Resident reported repeated intrusions by unknown figure appearing in bedroom. No signs of forced entry. He felt the blood drain from his face. What happened to that resident? Dr. Ross hesitated. He vanished, left behind hours of cassette recordings, all describing the same events you're experiencing. She emailed scanned copies of the man's notes, handwritten pages filled with desperate scribbles. It knows my name. It hides when I watch. It wants me to see it. One line, underlined 3 times, stood out the most. The closet is its door. He set the papers down, staring at the taped-up closet across the room. The same closet, the same house, the same hour every night. And now, whatever had haunted that man decades ago, had found him. Chapter 15, The Forgotten Resident. The name of the man who lived there before him was Arthur Bellamy, a quiet, reclusive writer who disappeared without a trace in 1978. Neighbors said he kept to himself, rarely spoke, and was last seen leaving his home at night, barefoot. Dr. Ross found a few of his surviving belongings in an evidence archive, notebooks, photographs, and a single reel of audio tape. When she played it, the recording was almost inaudible at first, static, breathing, and a trembling voice whispering fragments. Closet, not mine, watches. Then a sound, a low, guttural hiss that made her immediately stop the playback. It's the same frequency range I picked up on your camera mics, she explained later. Whatever was tormenting Arthur, it's still here. They compared notes. Every detail lined up: 3:15 a.m. disturbances, the hand from the closet, the vanishing tape, the temperature drops. It was as if history was repeating itself, frame by frame. But one question haunted him most. Why him? Why now? That night, he searched the walls of the closet, tapping along the wooden panels. Near the baseboard, he felt a hollow space. He pried it open, revealing an old, rusted box. Inside, a photograph. Arthur Bellamy standing in that same bedroom. And behind him, the same shadowed figure, watching. Chapter 16, The 3:15 a.m. Phenomenon. It always happened at 3:15 a.m. Not 3:14, not 3:16. Always down to the second. Dr. Ross noticed the pattern first. Every incident, every spike in EMF, every whisper or distortion, occurred exactly at that time. It's a convergence window, she explained. A recurring point when the veil between dimensions thins. Whatever's in that house knows it. He didn't want to believe in windows or veils. He wanted science, logic, but logic had already abandoned him. That night, he sat awake with a clock on the nightstand and all 3 cameras recording. He promised himself he wouldn't look away. 3:10, 3:12, 3:14. The air pressure dropped so suddenly his ears popped. The clock's second hand froze. Then, for exactly 1 minute, the cameras glitched, not with static but silence. Like the world itself muted. When they resumed, the footage showed him still sitting on the bed, except he wasn't moving. His eyes were open, but unfocused. Something stood behind him, one hand resting on his shoulder. He didn't remember that. He didn't feel it. But there it was, clear as day. At 3:16, everything returned to normal. The clock ticked again. He blinked, unaware a minute had passed. And when he replayed the footage, his voice, calm, detached, whispered 3 words during that lost minute. It's my turn. Chapter 17, The Poltergeist Escalation. After that night, things turned violent. The presence that once hid in shadows no longer bothered to stay unseen. It wanted him to know it was there. Doors slammed on their own, violently enough to shake the frames. Lights flickered until bulbs shattered. Objects moved, sometimes in slow motion, as if pushed by invisible hands. Once, his phone flew off the nightstand and cracked against the wall. Dr. Ross called it poltergeist activity. But he didn't care what it was called anymore. He just wanted it gone. She advised him to stay calm, to avoid giving it emotional energy. But that was impossible. How do you stay calm when the air feels like it's breathing against your skin? When the walls echo with your name, whispered from nowhere. The cameras caught everything. A chair dragging itself across the room. Papers swirling in a vortex before falling flat. Even the blanket being pulled off him in real time, and staying suspended midair for several seconds before dropping. That clip went viral online after he sent it to a forum for help. Thousands debated it. Glitch? Hoax? Real haunting? But none of them heard what he heard. A faint voice under the static, whispering from the corner of the room. You open the door. Now you can't close it. Chapter 18, A Cry for Help. He reached his breaking point. The fear, the exhaustion, the constant sense of being hunted. It all collapsed into one desperate act. He decided to record himself not as evidence this time, but as a plea. He sat before the camera, eyes sunken, voice trembling. If anyone sees this, he began. Please, tell me what this is. I haven't slept in days. It's not in my head. I swear it's not. His voice cracked. I just want it to stop. Behind him, the closet door loomed, taped shut again, but barely holding. Every so often, the sound of faint breathing leaked through the silence. He kept talking, tears forming as he tried to make sense of it all. I didn't do anything. I just wanted to know what was happening. And now it won't leave me alone. Follows me. It watches me. Halfway through his recording, the light flickered. His expression shifted from fear to dread. No, he whispered, staring past the camera. Not now. The screen shook violently. Static flooded the feed. Then, a scream, cut off mid-breath. The next frame showed the room empty. The chair still rocking. The video ended there. He uploaded it anyway, hoping anyone would understand. But the internet only made it worse. Chapter 19, The Investigator Returns. When Dr. Ross saw the new footage, she drove back that same night. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She needed to see it for herself. The house looked worse than before. Windows fogged from the inside. Lights dimmed as if energy itself was draining from the place. The moment she stepped in, her equipment malfunctioned. Batteries drained instantly. Cameras froze. Audio recorders hissed with white noise. She found him sitting on the floor, staring blankly at the closet door. His voice was barely a whisper. It talks now, he muttered. It knows my name. Dr. Ross tried to ground him, asking calm, clinical questions, but something about the air felt alive. The EMF detector on her wrist spiked erratically, beeping in short, uneven bursts. Then came the smell. Metallic, like rust or old blood. It drifted from the closet. She placed a small sensor near the door. The readings went off the charts. And then, the door shuddered. Once, twice. Don't, he whispered. Don't open it. Dr. Ross hesitated, her rational mind warring with pure instinct. But before she could decide, the duct tape ripped itself loose, slowly, as if an unseen hand was peeling it away from the frame. They both froze. The camera caught every second. Something inside whispered her name. Chapter 20, The Breaking Point. That whisper broke her composure. Dr. Ross stumbled back, heart pounding, every inch of logic screaming that this was impossible. She'd studied hauntings for years, the psychology, the physics, the human tendency to misinterpret shadows. But this was deliberate, intelligent, aware. The man, pale, trembling, began to laugh. It wasn't joy. It was the kind of laughter that comes when fear burns past breaking point. You see it now, he said. You finally see it. The lights in the hallway flared white, then went out. The entire house fell into darkness. Her night vision camera flickered on, and for just a moment the screen showed something impossible. A faint outline standing behind him. It wasn't human. The shape was distorted, long-limbed, hunched forward, like something caught halfway between existence and nothingness. She whispered his name, but he didn't move. The figure leaned closer. Then a loud bang. The camera toppled. Static. When the feed returned, the figure was gone. The man was unconscious, but breathing. Dr. Ross dragged him out of the room, tears streaking down her face. For the first time, she admitted what she'd never dared to say before. "This isn't just paranormal activity," she whispered to the recorder. "This is a haunting, and it knows we're here." Chapter 21: The Hidden Files. After that night, Dr. Ross stopped treating the case like an investigation. It became a rescue mission. She took the man to her office, gave him a place to rest, and began digging into the house's history again. Something had to explain what was happening. Days of research led her deeper than public records, into archived municipal data, old police reports, and finally, a set of sealed files labeled Property Evidence, 1994. Inside those files was the truth. The house had once belonged to a man named Daniel Holt, a recluse who vanished without a trace. Neighbors had reported strange lights, screams, and one chilling detail: the constant sound of knocking from inside his walls. When police entered, the place was empty, except for a small wooden box in the bedroom closet. The box was burned shut, and the case was closed as unexplained. Dr. Ross's eyes widened. The same closet, the same layout, the same disturbances. And there, stapled to the back of the report, was a faded photograph, a blurry figure standing in that very room. The shape was identical to what she'd seen on her footage. She leaned back in her chair, whispering under her breath, "It's not the house that's haunted. It's the room." Chapter 22: The Origin of the Entity. The more Dr. Ross uncovered, the darker the story became. Daniel Holt wasn't just some lonely recluse. He'd been obsessed with documenting the supernatural. Decades before, he'd filled journals with theories about energy imprints, dimensional veils, and entities that feed on fear. One entry chilled her to the bone. It read, "I found a way to see them. The camera captures what the eye can't. But they've seen me too. And now they won't leave." It was dated just a week before Holt disappeared. Dr. Ross pieced it together. Holt must have been experimenting with cameras just like her client. Somehow he'd invited something through, something that lingered. She compared the old police photo to her modern footage frame by frame. The resemblance was uncanny. The same proportions, the same long, shadowed limbs. Whatever Holt had captured, it was still there. It wasn't a ghost of a person. It was a manifestation born from attention, from observation itself. Every time someone watched the footage, it grew stronger, as if awareness was feeding it. And now, with millions of views online, that entity had found something new. A global audience. Dr. Ross whispered to herself, horrified, "Oh God! Every person who's seen that video might have just invited it in." Chapter 23: The Viral Haunting. It started small, strange reports trickling in from random viewers. People claimed that after watching the video, they'd heard knocking at night. Some said their lights flickered in sync with the original footage. Others woke to find their cameras or phones recording by themselves. At first, everyone thought it was just mass hysteria, the power of suggestion. But then, Dr. Ross began receiving messages with attached clips. In one, a man's curtain moved violently behind him, though his window was closed. In another, a woman's mirror reflected a shape that wasn't standing in front of it. The comments section under the viral post turned into a digital seance. Users begged for answers. Others joked, until they started vanishing from threads mid-conversation. The man who originally uploaded the footage was nowhere to be found. His account vanished. His phone went dark. Dr. Ross tried to warn people, posting online about psychological contagion, hoping to downplay the supernatural. But deep down, she knew. Every new viewer was another doorway opened, another tether formed between their world and that thing. It wasn't haunting one house anymore. It was haunting the internet. And there was no way to delete what millions had already seen. Chapter 24: The Final Recording. Weeks later, Dr. Ross went silent. No interviews. No updates. Her colleagues assumed she'd burned out from the stress, until an encrypted file appeared in her university inbox. No sender. No metadata. Just one title, Final Recording.mp4. The footage opened with static, then her face. Pale, exhausted, eyes darting between shadows behind the camera. "If you're seeing this," she whispered, "it means it's already too late." Her office looked normal at first glance. Bookshelves, research notes, soft desk lamp. But every so often, something flickered in the corner, like a shape trying to form, then vanishing again. She held up one of Holt's journals, shaking slightly. "It feeds on attention," she said. "Every recording, every replay. It's another spark. I tried to contain it, but the data's already everywhere. I can't stop it." Then came the sound, that deep, rhythmic knocking. Once, twice, 3 times. Dr. Ross froze. The lamp dimmed. Her reflection in the office window began to move out of sync with her body. "I made the same mistake he did," she whispered, voice breaking. "I looked too long." The screen glitched violently, and for a single frame, a tall, distorted figure stood behind her. Then black. The file ended there. No one ever found Dr. Ross again. Chapter 25, What He Saw Will Haunt You. The video resurfaced one final time, re-uploaded by an anonymous account with no description, no tags, just a single caption, "Watch till the end." Within hours, it spread again. People couldn't resist. Curiosity is human nature, and that's exactly what it wanted. The final seconds of the footage, enhanced and slowed by internet sleuths, revealed something no one had noticed before. A reflection in the man's eyes. A faint figure, towering behind the camera. It wasn't just standing there. It was leaning in, watching him the same way he'd been watching it. And in the moment before the screen went black, just 2 words appeared, written across the static, almost like a message from inside the recording itself. "Keep watching." Some said it was a glitch. Others swore they saw movement in their own reflections after watching. A handful of viewers deleted their devices altogether, claiming their screens flickered whenever they passed by. No one knows what really happened to the man or to Dr. Ross. But one thing is certain, the footage is still out there, waiting. And if you've made it this far, maybe you've already seen it. Maybe it's already seen you.